Originally from a place called Milford, Connecticut. I moved to Hattiesburg during the pandemic. I work for a small software company based out of Austin. I'm the head of their QA department and support department. You know, I think we've all heard a lot of arguments in the last 4 years and beyond that about a lot of freedoms, a lot of First Amendment freedoms, like or freedom of speech, right to bear arms, and people go on about their freedom to do these things. And no one is talking about what happens when the natural course of things will present itself. If you say something that upsets people, people get upset. That's a cause and effect. That's just basic causality. You know, your freedom to say does not protect you from the repercussions of that. And that's not anything that anybody's talking about. Nobody's saying, okay, I said these terrible things about these people, or I said these wonderful things about these people, and these are the things that happen because of that. The media that people are being fed is just very like reactionary, and it's so obviously propaganda to just like elicit a certain response from people. Okay, here's some words that you may have heard in the last 4 years. Things like liberal or Democrat even. Like these are words that to some people have sort of a 4-letter word connotation. When you hear liberal, if you're, you know, on a certain side of things, it's going to just be like, don't listen to this person. They're crazy. And crazy is one of the most dismissive words out there, you know, and that's, again, just like a very simple purpose of propaganda or nationalistic type views, where it's like, just marginalize people, put a label on them, and you can say, you're this, you're the enemy, so I can just push you over there. I don't have to listen to what you have to say, and I don't have to see you as a human being. First, you have to understand it, understand the nature of it, of division, of propaganda, of being pigeonholed into these narratives, and be able to kind of step back, breathe. If you're having like an emotional reaction, you need to let that pass and come to a place where you're saying, okay, I was just made to feel a certain way by these things that I heard. What's really happening? I think that critical thought is a really important part of that, and it's not something that's really taught at all in the US. To step away from the narrative, to step away from these arguments that a lot of times you see in an online space or fed to you through media. You know, when you meet a person in public, you're in this moment of just shared humanity. Bridging that gap really comes from practicing what you preach. So I talk about respect and dignity, and I do my best to show others respect and dignity in all moments. The town that I grew up in, there were no people of color at all, like maybe one or two. Racism was not something that I had a very keen understanding of, at least in those early years. But Connecticut is economically oppressive. My family cannot afford to live in Milford anymore. The kind of money gentrification from New York crept up the shoreline and eventually pushed everybody out. That's Connecticut. It's hundreds of thousands of people living on top of each other who don't want to have anything to do with each other whatsoever. The heat is up, the pressure is on, and it either forges you into steel or it breaks you. And I am clearly not a broken human. People that I even knew in high school around those times and afterwards, we got to know each other through process of elimination. You know, because the like popular kids or whatever, they didn't want to have anything to do with us. So we just edited them out of our reality. And we're like, okay, you guys go over there, who's left? You come over here, you come over here. Then it was those festivals that I alluded to earlier that brought me to Texas for the first time. And I just connected with people, and I saw, you know, when you're up in New England, it's like everything is just in New England. Like if you've never left there or been anywhere else, your mind is only as large as Connecticut or Boston or, you know, maybe Massachusetts and Connecticut together. And when you leave and go to a place as big as Texas, it just blows the borders off of what you thought was possible. And everything I had been told about how life is and how you got to get a job and suffer and it's all about routine was just gone. It's like, no, I could move to Austin. I could spend $300 a month to live and ride a bicycle everywhere and be happy. And also there's hardly any winter. I think that the American dream has been something that has been grounded in capitalism. And I think that capitalism in its very core nature is an exploitative system. It's one person takes from another, one person scams another or grifts another, and they benefit and they move forward with that. And that's been a fundamental part of the American dream that's been kind of glossed over. And it's reminds me a little bit of like racism in Connecticut, where a lot of people, they don't believe that they are racist. They don't believe that they live in a racist environment, but it's just subversive. It's economic oppression, and those two things have been tethered together. And if you never look at it, if you don't need to look at it, you may go your entire life without ever having to. And having lived there and having lived for almost a year in Mississippi, I've seen the differences in the history. And it's something that's always been up in Connecticut, but people like to pretend that it's not there. Where down here, it was just very, flat out, there's a line. Here you go. People of one color over here, people of another color over here. This is how we live. It's just right out there in the open in that kind of way. And they're both, terrible systems, but I've just always felt a little bit better about one that just is like, yep, we are who we are and we're not going to pretend. The country's so divided, and even in the midst of that, like, you have so many big things hovering over your head, like climate change, and it's just difficult to find the space to kind of take it all apart. And inviting people into these spaces where there's an emphasis on listening, I think that that's really important.